Hi there, it's Katie Crysdale here from Lakeview Aquatic Consultants. I am happy to present today a great interview with Dr. Allison Petri from Abbey's Hope, which is a foundation located in St. Paul, Minnesota. We had a great conversation about the horrible recent entrapment incident in Houston, Texas, but we also talked about some other key takeaways for the commercial swimming pool industry, as well as some of the safety features and learnings that hopefully we can take from this terrible entrapment incident. I hope you enjoy this conversation. So it's Katie Crysdale here from Lakeview Aquatic Consultants. We have Dr. Allison Petri here from Abbey's Hope. Want to have a conversation today about the topic of entrapment. If you haven't heard of Abbey's Hope, we're going to get to know a little bit about the foundation and the story of Abigail Taylor. So welcome, Allison. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. So I just want to give a moment to introduce myself. I'm with Abbey's Hope in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Abbey's Hope was founded in 2008 after Abigail Taylor lost her life to a pool drain entrapment. Abbey was 6 years old and was at the local golf club, playing actually, of all things, in the wading pool. Her mom called the kids in, her and her sisters, to head home, and Abbey didn't leave the wading pool right away. A little bit frustrated, a little bit like, what is she doing? And then Abbey managed to get out of the pool, stumbled on the pool deck, ended up knocking a tooth out and falling into the large pool. Her mom reached her out of the pool and they could tell something was off, something was wrong. They took her immediately in an ambulance to Children's Hospital, where they thought maybe it was sunstroke or heat stroke, but they found, unfortunately, I'm sorry, this is very graphic, part of her intestine and her lower bowels in the bottom of her swimsuit. So they realized that she had been eviscerated, which is the medical term, or disemboweled by the pool drain, by the pool pump equipment in the kiddie pool. Realistically, there's not a scientific reason how she got off the pool. If it had been a deeper pool, she would have probably been stuck to the bottom and she would have drowned. She lived for 9 months, endured countless medical things. I work with the foundation. There's binders and binders of the challenges those 9 months were. But in that time, Abbey also asked her parents if she was going to be on the news. And they thought, why do you want to be on the news? Like, you want to be famous? And she's like, no, people have to know about this. So Abbey's Hope really was founded on the hope of her that her parents would do something to make pools safer. Her mom, Cati, got home and immediately started Googling what's entrapment, what's going on, and found some other stories of children, mostly who had drowned because of unsafe pool drains. And she was also horrified to find out almost immediately that the industry had safer pool drains, but for whatever reason, they were not being taken on or adopted. And they soon learned of the VGB, the Virginia Ground Baker Pool and Spa Safety Act, that had not really gone anywhere in federal legislation, and were able to start working on it with Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota, who came and visited Abbey in the hospital. In my role at Abbey's Hope is program manager. I do everything from collect the mail to invent all kinds of water safety programs around the Twin Cities and nationally.
And I want to say a big congratulations, because you had great success earlier this week, April 1st, 2024, when you announced the 500 free swim lessons available in the city of St. Paul. So that's an amazing, amazing process. Tell us a little bit about how that project took place.
We have partnered with the City of St. Paul Aquatics for a couple of years now, trying to do everything from free lifeguard trainings to life jacket giveaways to extending pool hours to opening free and open swim. We even have things like women's swim, where there's more modesty and privacy on the weekend. If you can think it, we're probably trying it in St. Paul. We really worked with Mayor Melvin Carter to push forward the idea of free swim lessons for kids. It's been the number one requested city service for 5 years, free and reduced price swim lessons. They gave 500 on Monday. They were registered for in less than an hour. The city did pledge another 500 that could be separately registered for in person with the aquatic staff. So that helps take down some of the digital divide and barriers. Really, the idea is the children we're targeting have barriers to getting swim lessons. But in Minnesota, the land of 10,000 lakes, they will absolutely be at our lakes and rivers all summer long. So we want them to be there using them safely and to enjoy the natural wonder of our state in a way that reflects the dignity that they have.
Swimming lessons are so important to water safety and drowning prevention. I want to talk a little bit, though, about the topic of entrapment, which is the original reason I invited you to connect. We've known each other for a little while now. I've unfortunately been passionate about entrapment for a number of years as a certified pool operator and CPO instructor. It's often been one of those things that people don't want to talk about within our industry because there's this false sense that entrapments don't happen anymore because of the Virginia Graham-Baker Act and the success. And I tell this story to everyone, but when I wrote an article for Pool Pro magazine a number of years ago about entrapment, the fact checker told me that my statement that entrapments continue to happen was not accurate and wanted citations. And once I provided citations, they backed off. But a lot of these entrapments are not necessarily fatal. They do lead to in-hospital death. What is Abbey's Hope hearing? What are you hearing within the industry?
There's a couple big important call-outs. Like the Virginia Graham-Baker Pool and Spa Safety Act is an incredible piece of legislation. It has nearly stopped entrapment deaths, but there's a couple cravats to it. It's for public pools only. So it doesn't cover residential pools. Many of our residential pools can be older. In many of the southern states, there's residential pools from the 80s, and they may or may not have old drain covers. Hopefully, if there's a drain cover being replaced in a residential pool, that pool professional is forward-thinking enough and also caring enough about children to only be willing to put in a VGB compliant drain cover. Really can't make them do it in private pools. And additionally, we're running into some challenges in things like Airbnbs and VRBOs. Vacation rentals do not qualify as a public pool currently. We have in Minneapolis a very small boutique hotel that has 4 rooms. It has a maximum capacity of maybe 20 people a night at this hotel. There are VRBOs and vacation rentals in the Orlando area that are targeted at 30 to 40 people, so you can get all your friends and come down as large family groups. These have lazy rivers. They have water slides. They have amazing pool setups. But they are considered a private pool, so technically not covered by the VGB. Additionally, when you travel internationally, my family just got back from a phenomenal Caribbean vacation. VGB doesn't apply. And to me, knowing that these type of drains are deadly to children, I don't let my kids swim in a pool in the Bahamas without a VGB compliant drain. It's not worth it. And it's something actually I will have a conversation with the owners and the pool operators and the hotel chains. It's such a small dollar solution to have a VGB compliant drain versus a flat drain cover. But also another thing in the industry, about 2 years ago, I found on Amazon flat drain covers that looked like this, just the old school flat drain covers. They're being sold on Amazon and on eBay under about 15 different names. We were able to trace them back to a manufacturer in China that was trying to flood the US market with them for about $6. We had a hard time working with some of the government officials, them saying, well, it's third-party sellers, it's eBay, it's Amazon, it's hard to control. Abbey's Hope, we basically said, I don't care if it's hard to control. And it was weird because they wanted to talk about a Consumer Product Safety Commission recall. And I said, well, we can do a recall, but usually we don't recall banned products. This is already a banned product in our country. It should not be for sale. We purchased some of them off Amazon and sent them to some important people's homes and to people's offices, being like, look, I can Amazon Prime you a dangerous pool drain in 2 days. This is a problem. The CPSC did issue a recall and did meet with Amazon and are continuing to meet with Amazon on really regulating products that we've already determined are unsafe. The federal government is trying to work to eliminate that. That being said, we did have last week a drowning related to an entrapment. When the news reached Abbey's Hope team and Abbey's parents, some hard time. Lots of emailing, lots of trying to see online, trying to see what happened, how could this has happened. And there's still so much unknown. But even just initially, it came out that she was completely in a 16-inch pipe. And all of us went, 16 inches? How could a kid be in a 16-inch pipe? So I'm sciencey by nature. I like to know things. I want to understand. I have a CPO certification. I'm like, I want to understand. I worked with Dr. Adam Kaczmarchi all Sunday evening he and I were on text messages and phones trying to be like, what happened? Well, I went to the craft store and found a 16-inch hoop. And actually it says it's 16 inches, but from here to here, it's closer to 15. All 3 of my children can fit through this. I can fit through this. If this was a pipe this big, I could have been sucked into it. But not big enough that I could imagine a child could swim into it. Additionally, we heard she was found hands first, which means she would have been pulled in by her feet. So she couldn't have swam in that way. And even I took this to my child's karate class to see he's the same age, what children, there wouldn't be enough room, maybe slight flutter kicks, but there wouldn't be any room for shoulder action. So we have to believe there was a catastrophic mechanical failure. I do believe that she was physically taken into the pipe rather than exploring. Some of the stories said they couldn't figure out where she went. Like, how did you not know where your kid went? And they thought maybe she went back in the hotel. Maybe we're like, oh, is this a supervision issue? Well, Dr. Kaczmarchi and I pulled up some aerial footage of the pool itself at the hotel, and it has like a zero depth entry pool, and then it has a lazy river around the perimeter. But on the back of the zero depth entry pool is a big wall. It's beautiful, looks amazing. But I couldn't figure out a spot where a parent could place themselves to watch their child while they're in the lazy river. I really dislike the idea of a pool design that doesn't allow you to watch your child at all times.
So I can speak a little bit to the public documents and make it easier in terms of not disclosing insider information that you might have. So I did a video earlier this week that I posted, and I looked at the legal filing from the family. And as best as I can recall from that legal filing, from 4:40 p.m. to 5:10 p.m., she was missing. And they inquired with the hotel regarding surveillance footage because they knew she had gone into the water. And it's not clear where the parents were, as you said, or what vantage point they had. But for 30 minutes, the parents had searched the building, had searched the area, could not locate her, requested to review the surveillance footage, and according to the legal filing, were refused by the property until police arrived on site. And so then the second piece is that I've been reviewing the inspection reports available from the Houston Department of Public Health from March 25th, March 26th. They're available online. I'll link to them below as well. But there are some clear gaps in what, like you said, they don't want to make conjecture or they don't want to speculate. But in one part of one report, it appears as though there was a renovation or a retrofit. There is an unmarked channel drain. Where did it come from? Who installed it? Was it sized properly? And then in the other inspection report on March 26th, which is very confusing to me, it describes the, quote, little pool as opposed to the March 25th inspection, which describes the lazy river. So it starts to become very confusing, like you said. Is it plumbed, connected together? Are they separate? What renovations took place? Why on earth would a pipe of this size be left uncovered? Was it covered by a channel drain that shattered? Was it covered by something else that shattered? Was it not sized correctly? Like, there's so many questions that we have in what, under any circumstances, should not have happened.
And ultimately, the beginning and the end is a complete tragedy. It all begins and ends with a young girl lost her life. And we do need to get answers, and we do need to look at if anything else is modeled the same way, if there's any similar pools. At Abbey's Hope, we love our CPOs, and we love, like you, our CPO instructors. The general CPO book does touch on Abbey's case. Abigail Taylor's pool drain entrapment has about 5 things that happen that a CPO doing what they're supposed to be doing could have stopped it. The drain was cracked. They could have replaced it. The drain was cracked. They used drywall screws, which rusted, to replace it instead of proper screws. The pool pump broke on the little pool, in this case, the wading pool. They added a full-size pool pump to a tiny little pool, way oversized, way too much power. Additionally, they had continued problems of golf balls getting in from the putting green into the plumbing of the wading pool. Simple solution to that would be netting up on that side of the pool fence. My CPO class was taught by a gentleman named Eric, who teaches a bunch of them here in Minnesota, but he had the unfortunate job of taking apart the mechanics of the pool that took Abbey's life. He found parts of her intestines in the pump and filter system. So he obviously teaches that pool class with a little extra time and attention to Abbey's Hope. And I know you do too as well. I know you use some of our materials. You share we have this little brochure that shows parents that a pool drain can be as unsafe as a bear trap. Just this idea that all drowning is preventable, but it's especially horrific when it's a mechanical or operator failure, because it just shouldn't be. Like, we owe kids the idea of a safe pool. And as the average parent, we ask parents to look for open drains, look for cracked drains, don't enter a pool that has unsafe drains. And we try to educate what safe drains are, but ultimately, I don't want to say it's above their pay grade, but it really is up to the CPO and up to managers of hotels and up to owners of Airbnbs to really be observant of their pools. We ask parents to supervise their kids. We can teach them how to be a water watcher, how to properly supervise their kid in the pool. But it's hard to teach. They can't know what's going on in our pump room. They're not going to know if you're using improper size piping underneath the concrete. I was confused by the little pool too. I'm like, do they mean shallow? Do they mean what do they mean by little pool? Additionally, parents wouldn't know how things are retrofitted, or they wouldn't necessarily know when they walk out into that pool deck that this looks gorgeous, and be like, this is not safe. I can't watch my child at all times. And looking at the structure with her missing for a chunk of time too, I looked at the Google Maps and I thought, well, I guess if I was watching my kid, if I'm sitting here on a deck with my book, like most moms, that's not the mom I am. I'm in the pool, no books. But again, you do better, you know better, you do better. No shame on any parent if she's trying to actively supervise her kid sitting on a lawn chair. Your kid comes around the lazy river, you see them. They come around the lazy river, you see them. They don't come around. Okay, you wait a couple minutes. Well, maybe they stop for a second. Maybe they, grab tubes with someone else. They'll be here in a moment. At some point, you go, wait, where are they? So then you get up and you walk around. And you still don't see them. But you can see from the way the hotel is structured, there is I think there's 4 or more entrances back into the hotel. It does seem very reasonable for a parent to assume they didn't come back around because for whatever reason they got out of the lazy river and went in the hotel. So there is that significant delay there. I don't know of any person who'd be like, they didn't get out of the lazy river, they got sucked into the mechanics of the pool. Even the best job of parenting was somewhat prevented here by the structure of the actual pool, and we need to be looking at things like that as those of us who work in the industry. It's a really nice looking pool. Looks like a great place to hang out. Looks great in your photos for your hotel. It is not great for child supervision and child safety.
Well, and I want to touch on what you said, both in the case of Abigail Taylor as well as other entrapments that have been reported. I mean, the likelihood of entrapment does increase in shallower water where people are more proximate to openings, whether that is the circulation pump and so the drains are withdrawing some water, or whether that is a spray park or a splash pad, or as you mentioned, a lazy river. Was there a secondary pump responsible for creating a water current that somehow malfunctioned and sucked in instead of pushing water out? I mean, we're going to need a lot more details. As it's investigated, I really do hope the family, they're suing the property, which is their prerogative, but I do hope that we're able to get some details or some information, which is the only downside to a lawsuit where there may be a settlement, details are hidden, or we don't get to know more about the case from a learning perspective. I love what you said about the actions being taken by some properties which are functioning as commercial sites, but under the guise of Airbnb or Vrbo, or the big one that I've been tracking is Swimply, where different states and counties have tried to bring in standards for these properties. And then the Swimply legal team gets sicked on, like the Wisconsin Health Department, New Jersey Health Department, Palm Springs Health Department, and then they back off completely. But as you've said, there's no requirement to retrofit these drains or have any sort of standards. What are your concerns, either as a parent or as somebody who's seeing this proliferation in our industry?
I think it's so hard because, again, I said, I don't think the average mom, dad who takes their kids to the pool is an understanding of how a pool functions, the pool equipment. So we have to have people who are the CPOs or who are in charge of them really step up and make sure it's in proper working order. I had a backyard pool. I cannot fathom renting it out hourly or by the day. People come and use it who may or may not know how to swim, may or may not know how to properly use the equipment. We do see a lot of drain entrapments, and we saw a lot before in hot tubs. That drain is usually very close to the people. Many people will complain in the public ones, like in hotels, that they stub their toes on that VGB drain because it's raised. And I'm like, great, I'm so glad you did, because then you were safe. It was there, it was perfect, and these kids are in it and can get access to that drain. Smaller children typically don't have access to the drain at the bottom of the 10 feet diving well or wherever. So these smaller wading pools have drains. Splash pads often have a lot of mechanics to pump and move the water, and the drains are closer. So we have to make sure that we're, as operators, checking them out daily, making sure they're safe, making sure they are ready, working order, and then be willing to face the harshness of the public when we say our pool is not open today. I actually saw recently a TikTok of a hotel owner talking about shutting down their pool because the drain was cracked on 4th of July. I reached out to her. We sent her some Abby's Hope stuff just saying thank you. Like, I'm sure they came for you on 4th of July because they wanted to swim at the hotel. But with an unsafe drain, you're putting everyone in that pool at risk, and it's playing a roulette that my conscience could not do. Additionally, in Minnesota, we have the Abigail Taylor Pool and Spa Safety Act, which very interestingly requires a CPO to be on duty all open hours of the pool. So we have a lot of hotels that have almost all their maintenance people are CPOs. Interesting thing comes in then if we do push that Airbnbs and these Swimplys are public pools, which I would argue they are because they're pools that you pay to access. How do you have a CPO on duty? And there are hotels who, if they don't have a maintenance man after 8 p.m., that means their hotel pool closes at 8. So it just feels like an unfairness that for those who are following the rules and doing what they're supposed to be doing and trying to make their pool as safe as possible, that other ones can be like, well, it's a boutique and it's, it's just a this or that and it doesn't count as me and it doesn't matter.
I think there's so much you've already mentioned in terms of my personal experience is similar to yours. We were in Colombia last year and it was a large commercial pool, but it had flood drains. It was a heritage building. There's no requirement to retrofit. And speaking as somebody who's somewhat tangentially connected to construction, it can be very hard to retrofit, which is not to justify the use of these flat drain covers. They do make alternative covers that you can lay over top to create that dome, as you mentioned, but it's at a quote great expense that some people argue that they don't want to pay until you're trying to explain to them, as I often do as a management consultant, the cost is someone's life or the cost is $1,500. And people are very short-sighted in the sense that you also mentioned we have on the certified pool operator playlist, we go from Abbey's Hope Foundation on your YouTube channel regarding the interview with the maintenance person and the length of the screws that they used. So the simple quote shortcut of not going to the hardware store for the right screw, it's a 50-cent item that ended up costing a child their life. That in the moment spot decision that you made was a bad decision. But if management or ownership is creating a workplace environment where you're so short for time or you're so short for money that you can't go buy the right screws, that is a bigger question that does need to be legislated in a way that forces people to understand the risk.
I don't want to be the no fun, like we don't need these pools, shut them down. It's not a safe pool. It doesn't need to be open. It doesn't need to be operated. They need to figure out how to prioritize it being safe. I can't tell you how many hotels I check into and the closing and self-closing, self-latching doors or access to the pool is not proper. It's doors are propped open or gates are broken. I talk to the management every time. Often I travel with Dr. Ketchmarchi from the National Drowning Prevention Alliance, and him and I will gladly go have a talk with hotel management when we walk and find that the pool doors are accessible to children. At Abbey's Hope, we work with Families United. It's a group of now nearly 100 families that have lost a child to drowning. Childhood drowning affects a lot of families, but a small group of them say, I can't do anything about my kid, but I want to work for all the other kids. And these are really special parents, and I really value and respect their opinions, and I value and respect the work they put in to save other children. And it feels very flippant to me when someone doesn't want to spend time to fix a gate at a hotel to keep kids out, or is bothered that this drain costs $60 versus this one that costs $7. But I know it's not really people saying kids don't matter. I don't believe these people wish any harm to children, but it's being short-sighted. It's being quick fix. It's being goals are different than my goals. And I need to work to help them see these children that things happen to, like Abby. She should have just gone home and had dinner. Like they would have made different choices, she would have just gone home and had dinner. And realistically, if you look at the setup for what happened to Abigail Taylor, it was a freak accident, but it was going to happen to a kid that summer. Like something terrible was going to happen to a kid because of the negligence and the repeated willful negligence. So we just have to get to a place where if we don't see our job, if we're running a pool and we don't see how that connects to child safety, maybe we need to reevaluate our own values and reevaluate the importance of what we're doing. I fully sympathize with people who are hotel maintenance workers, because most of them are hotel CPOs. And I know you could be in room 723 unclogging a toilet, have a call in from room 312 being like they need a new TV remote. Room 411 has some weird electrical thing going on. I get you have a punch list. And there's just always probably more to do than you can do. But I think there needs to be a carving out of time for that pool and give it a different level of attention and different level of respect than any place else in your hotel. If room 312 needs to wait an hour longer to get their TV remote, okay. But if we have to do something at the pool, it needs to be done now, or the pool needs to be shut down. And again, I'm sorry to all the hotel managers that have to deal with unhappy parents that can't swim. But if you think about if someone's harmed in the pool, the outcome for yourself professionally and emotionally, and it will impact the rest of your life. So taking on those couple hours of discomfort when the pool is shut down to make the pool right.
I think it's going to unfortunately be a watershed moment for our industry in terms of highlighting for the first time in a long time for the wider industry that entrapment really is an issue. I've heard some of those word of mouth stories that you described, also hearing from people who said, we went to visit my parents and my children, so the grandbabies were in the older spa and their hair got caught. Thank God I was with them. I was able to get some scissors and it wasn't an issue. Or I recently was at a large heritage home here in the Calgary area that was being converted to a B&B, a bed and breakfast. And I learned in that process that bed and breakfasts are exempt from commercial pool regulation here in Alberta, which was scary because that one had a flat drain cover. Thankfully, that person had taken my course and was really aware of the risk. And so the pool is still being renovated. But I think just there's so much complacency, and a lot of the pool operators that we train in our monthly Zoom classes are about 50% from hotels. And as I've taught over the last 7 or 8 years, I've really shifted my class a little bit to focus on that access that I have with them for 12 or 16 hours. And really within the first hour, one of the first things we drill in is just close the pool. Whether it's a chemical imbalance, whether it's a light that's fallen out of the wall, whether it's a drain cover, it's not worth somebody getting killed or hurt and suing the property. Take the bad reviews. This is not brain surgery. Just close the pool no matter what it takes. Because there's such fear now in, people complaining, posting bad reviews, trolling a business, and yet we're missing the forest for the trees. There was that horrible chemical burn. There's been 2 major chemical injuries alleged in the last month where children were significantly burned by high chemical levels because facilities, and they were hotels, did not want to close the pool. And it's all preventable.
There's no shortcuts. There are no shortcuts to pool safety. And so if you're trying to take one, reflect on why that's a priority to you. And I would love to educate parents to understanding if your hotel pool is shut down. I'm sorry little Jimmy can't swim, and I'm sorry the hockey team's going to have to go to dinner and then swim. But if it's a service that can't be safely offered to you, you don't want it.
Well, and I think that's a big piece is exactly what you said, Allison. If it's service that cannot be safely offered, and a lot of people, when I see them coming into the CPO program for the first time, they think of the pool as a set it and forget it amenity. Like we turn on the lights in the breakfast area, or we turn on the lights in the gym and the fitness area. We turn on the lights in the meeting room, and then we don't have to do anything because nothing is going to change. Whereas those of you who've operated pools know that the chemicals are constantly fluctuating. There is the opportunity for blockages or changes in the flow of the pool based on the water level. I mean, kids are going to have fun. They might stick a scrunchie or a sock. They might try and plug some part of the pool that then impacts the hydraulics. And so this thinking that pools, whether it's a hotel, an HOA, any type of property or organization that thinks, well, the pool doesn't need that much maintenance, this guy or gal can take 15 minutes each morning to open it up and then they're done for the day. That's really not the right mentality. And I think that's also a big piece of this. No different from people saying, yeah, I'll just rent out my pool in the backyard and make some extra money for my next vacation, without realizing that same level of both liability and are you providing a minimum standard of care that is prudent for the safety of children and people that you're inviting over.
I would love to say we'll try to get 0 drownings. It's not likely to happen. So that's not what that's not a measure of success or not. And I recently was asked by a news station to share some Abbey's Hope success stories. So we shared stories about giving out life jackets and other things. And I said, here's the problem, though, in working in drowning prevention. My success story in Minnesota is some kids went with their family to a lake. They hung out, they swam, maybe they ate lunch. They came home and had dinner and got tucked in their beds. Not newsworthy. It's not going to be on our local station. People aren't going to be talking about it on podcasts. But that is the work of drowning prevention, and that is the successes. We have to look at it in the small ways and know they're out there and know that we're fighting the good fight. When horrific things happen, like what happened in Texas, really taking the time to look at it and evaluate it and learn from it. The Virginia Graham Baker Pool and Spa Safety Act is currently up for reauthorization in the United States Congress and Senate. At Abbey's Hope, we are the leaders of that bill now. Nancy Baker, Graham's mom, is no longer really involved. She's in water safety. She's involved as here and there as need be. Her daughter, Hallie Baker, sits on our board of directors. Actually, Hallie is Graham's sister, and Grace, Abby's sister, sit on our board of directors, which is a kind of nice touch, the 2 big families that got that law. So Abbey's Hope, we carry that bill through every time it comes up for reauthorization. And we will absolutely be looking at this case and seeing if there's any lessons learned, any tweaks we need to the bill, or anything we can do to add in additional layers of safety.
I'd be curious to see who is responsible for this alleged renovation. Was this a retrofit by a third-party company that came on site and did not file permits with the Houston Health Department? Was this internal staff who made some sort of change that they were not qualified to make? We don't have enough information yet. So that's going to be another piece that I think we're going to have to see develop, because in my opinion, if there is a third party involved with construction or renovation, the families very well might tag them on to this lawsuit or seeking more details in terms of who did what, where, when, why, how. The construction industry, in my experience on the service side, is always very cranky and reticent to take responsibility, making these changes that need to be made. And so I think that's a bigger conversation we could have at a later date about improving construction standards and licensure of different people who are doing this work. But what have you guys seen in terms of changes trying to be made in terms of construction work or service or repair?
At Abbey's Hope, we really try to put relationships first. So we really do try to build relationships with people who are CPOs or who are pool maintenance people or pool technicians or construction companies. I mean, if you are someone who normally remodels bathrooms or kitchens, you shouldn't be remodeling a commercial pool. We have to understand it's different. Hotels and pool owners and everyone who deals with the pool has to understand it's different. If your pool malfunctions, you could have multiple deaths. It's not the same. Unfortunately, sometimes industry does struggle to want to get on board. So I think we try to be careful to not attack them, but also help them understand that they can do better. Things like in Minnesota, all these pool techs, they've all heard Abbey's story. I mean, we're 15 years after Abbey's story in Minnesota. And when someone asks me what I do for a job, the first thing I ask is, did you live here 15 years ago? Because if they lived in Minnesota 15 years ago, they heard about Abbey's story. Abbey's parents were sent hundreds of unsafe pool drain covers taken out in Minnesota pools by pool techs. So if we can touch your heart or touch your mind or even just touch your wallet by making you afraid of a lawsuit, we'll get there with our industry. But again, we'll try to start with relationships, and we'll try to start with, hey, no one wants anything to happen to a kid. So if we can start at that base layer and how can we work from there, hopefully we can get there. I hope it doesn't take another 15 years. I hope we can continue to move more rapidly in developing these relationships.
I do hope that the state of Texas, being as large as it is and being part of the United States population-wise and having a lot of pools and having a very powerful pool industry, that I hope should Aliyah's parents or the state legislature seek to make a change in relation to this, that it can have some real teeth following in what you've described here in Minnesota, because it is just so horrific. It's the most horrific entrapment that I've heard of in recent memory, and it shouldn't have happened. And the exact circumstances, we don't have the details yet. Those will continue to come out, but if the things that are alleged to have occurred did occur, there's a lot of questions to be answered by a lot of people, and a lot of opportunities where the pool could have been closed, or permits could have been sought, or inspections could have been done. There were so many opportunities, like you said, with Abigail Taylor's story, of at least 5 different things or 5 different opportunities for that outcome to have been prevented. If any one of those things had been done properly, it might have broken the chain that led to her death.
Yeah, and at Abbey's Hope, we extend the deepest sympathy and the most care to the family. We will not be reaching out to the family. If the family would like to reach out to us, we would absolutely talk to them. We would absolutely help them however they need. I'm a mom myself, and as a mom, one of the hardest things of this whole thing was thinking of that time of that mom running around the pool deck, running in and out of the hotel, trying to just figure out where her kid went. I said to my husband, the horrible thought was probably at some point she thought someone took her kid. Mm-hmm. And having also known the kid was in the pool, that might have been the better alternative. I know the trend is to think it's minimized because it's one kid, but it's one kid and one story that didn't have to happen. So one kid is important, and it's one mom who ran around and siblings, and one child ripples out to a huge effect, and this child matters, and we will show that this child the dignity by giving this the attention it needs and try to learn as best we can, and support the family if they need it.
Well, we haven't talked a lot about the actual conditions of Aliyah's death, but it's really horrific, and I think that's the piece that really stuck for me, is that both the mother who was looking for her child, and that water was fairly shallow, so there had to be a point at which, if you knew she went into the water and she hadn't come out, how do you even comprehend that? That's just unimaginable. And then also for her, right? Aliyah was just there to swim, just there to have a good time. And I hope her death was instantaneous, because it's impossible to comprehend otherwise.
Hopefully there'll be enough information that comes out from it. We can take lesson learned. If not, we can respect this family and understand their need for privacy and their need to handle the loss of their child in the way that's most appropriate for them. I know we often think there should be more families that work in drowning prevention when we look at the numbers of children that drown. But unless that tragedy strikes your family, you don't know how your family will react. You don't know how you will choose to continue on. And if you choose to continue on quietly and privately, that's absolutely fine. If you choose to continue on and make drowning prevention something you work in, you can always reach out to Abbey's Hope. You can reach out to the Families United to Prevent Drowning or the National Drowning Prevention Alliance. All organizations, all 3 of them, would be happy to help families that have lost a child to drowning, or someone who knows of an unsafe pool. Just give you the resources you need and an ability to prevent the preventable tragedy of drowning.
And I wanted to speak to what you mentioned, Allison. I think it's really important for people to know there are mechanisms in a lot of states, counties, and provinces to report unsafe pool conditions in commercial settings. And that's not always, certainly not the case for residential pools or private rentals, but most jurisdictions do have an anonymous reporting form or a phone number you can call. No different if you thought you were experiencing symptoms from food poisoning at a restaurant or some sort of infection from a nail salon. And I know myself, as somebody who's seen a lot of pools, I've availed myself of that form to report unsafe conditions where I maybe attempted to try and speak to somebody about it and knew that it was a major safety concern or a legislative violation. And so the average person, they're not expected to know their local pool laws, but certainly if something looks suspicious or concerning to you, anybody has the right to report those pools, and they will be investigated. They're not going to just be shut down. You're not going to put them out of business, but it could be the difference between preventing something worse from happening.
We all have an opportunity to have eyes on things. There's the popular thing being a Karen, where it's a negative thing, complaining, whatever. I don't think you can possibly be a Karen when you're protecting a child's life. Speak up, say something, help the management understand. If the management won't understand or take action, usually it's the local health department, and that's usually, you could find it from a Google search. Or even realistically, you can call local fire departments. They usually have connections to that as well. Just say, hey, especially if you're traveling, hey, I'm from out of town. I'm seeing some problems with this pool. Could you help me report it, or could you make sure someone checks it out?
That's probably one of my proudest moments as a CPO instructor, when I get those text messages saying, I came into work today and the pool drain was broken and I closed the pool, right? And they're trying to get a pep talk because they know their manager is going to be unhappy about the pool being closed, whether it's the 4th of July or some, weekend rental. But it's the right thing to do. And it's a tough call for sometimes a low level employee to make in the face of, bad reviews, bad PR, lost revenue, but it is the safest decision to make, unfortunately.
And I will say, you can tell them that every time those type of stories get back to Scott or Katie Taylor or Nancy Baker or Karen Cohn, all three parents, all 3 children that lost their lives to drain entrapment, it's a special kind of balm on the injury of the loss of their child, to know that it's not in vain, and to know that pools are being closed until they're made right makes their efforts feel like they matter. It makes their child's loss a little bit less devastating because it's providing hope. We're called Abby's Hope for a reason, because there's hope and there are things that can be done and it can be better.
You said it's a very tough road for a lot of families. I interviewed recently. She's the mother of Cati in Texas, and so she's responsible for Live Like Cati's bill, which is regarding supervision of pools when they're bringing in large groups. And she was speaking with me about the challenges that she has personally experienced in terms of, people making suggestions about her failures as a parent and going through the process. That bill in Texas was ultimately successful, but it's been very, very painful and very, very public. And she said I don't regret doing it, but it takes a certain kind of energy that not everyone has.
It is definitely an uphill battle. And obviously that bill has exceptions. Some municipalities don't need to follow it. But her daughter, Cati, who had Down syndrome, they had requested she wear a life jacket at summer camp. You can check the ways it was not followed, that request. And it's unfortunate when you can look at drownings like hers and you can really look at like the one thing, if it would have happened different, it very clearly shouldn't have happened. Some drownings have multiple causes, but ones like that, it's like, you were entrusted with the care of this child. They asked you to put a life jacket on her and go in the pool. You didn't, and she drowned. Like, it's so senseless. And life jackets to all the Texas day camps and making sure that they're putting them on kids and they're understanding the why. So it's truly a heroic effort, and really an effort that doesn't come out of anything but complete love for their children.
Mm-hmm. I will link to that recording with Corey de la Pena. Thank you, Allison. I mean, she's a wonderful lady who's really made it her mission in light of this horrible tragedy in her family to pay it forward. Like you said, with Families United, it takes a certain kind of person to have that energy, but to really recognize the impact that they can have on our industry. And I think there is a lot of people maybe who watch this recording who think, there's a great divide sometimes between municipal pools, in my experience, where there's lots of lifeguards and lots of care when it comes to safety. Speaking broadly, generally, that's not always the case. And then residential, and then kind of everyone in between, that gray area of HOAs and campgrounds and hotels, motels, Airbnbs, whatever we want to call them, where we need to do better. We need to take that, we need to do what we can to bridge that divide, I think.
Absolutely. And for those people who do have those types of pools, there are plenty of free resources with the National Drowning Prevention Alliance. Abby's Hope has some free resources. Spend a little time on Google, spend a little time talking to your management. Just see what you can do to increase the safety at your pool and really give families a fun time and a safe time at your facility.
Okay, so I want to say a big thank you to Dr. Allison Petri from Abby's Hope. Do you have any final thoughts or anything you want to leave us with?
No, I just want to encourage everyone to get up in the morning and remember what we're doing matters to children. And so put that at your heart, put that at your hands as you work, and do the best for children, and know that it's appreciated, and know that the little things are big things to those of us who work in water safety and drowning prevention. So do the little things, and we will love and appreciate you so much.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Allison.